Now I want to turn from what is happening and the storm to what was supposed to happen, and that is the dedication of the memorial honoring the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Tens of thousands of people were expected to turn out here in Washington to honor Dr. King on this, the 48th anniversary of his I Have a Dream speech. General Colin Powell was instrumental in getting that memorial built, and he's with us this morning to talk about that and some other things too. General Powell, welcome. General, you were very instrumental in getting this memorial built and done. I think you raised yourself over $1 million for this.
I was pleased to serve on the leadership committee. Many people contributed to it, and my contribution was relatively modest compared to what others did. But it was an important memorial to build.
I wanted to ask you this, a more personal question. What did Martin Luther King Jr. mean to you?
He meant a great deal to me. You know, when he gave that famous speech, I was serving in Vietnam. When he was killed several years later, I was training to go back to Vietnam. So for most of that period, I was away from the country. My wife and young children were in Birmingham, Alabama during those terrible days in 1963. And what Dr. King meant to me was that the second revolution, the second Civil War was underway. It was time now to meet the dream set out for us by our founding fathers. And what Dr. King did was not just free African Americans, he freed all of America. He caused us, through his sacrifice and his service, he caused America to look at a mirror of itself. Look in that mirror, and what do you see? Is this who we want to be? Is this the inspiration we want to be to the rest of the world? And the answer was no. And we knew we had to change, and he was the leader who took us through that change, and that's why it's so fitting that he be memorialized in this manner.
Do you feel that his dream has now been realized?
Now, if Dr. King was here now, he would be raging about poverty. He would be raging about inequalities in our society. He would be raging about the fact that we are not educating all of our youngsters, and especially our African American youngsters. He'd also be chewing them out a bit, saying, you know, you've got to work harder to get your education. We have to bring back intact families so we can raise children in loving, intact families. And he would also be on the world stage talking about poverty and inequality throughout the world. He was a man who transcended the African American experience. He became an American icon, and he became an icon to the rest of the world.
Dr. King and his era, it was a tough time for America. But we're going through some more tough times right now. What do you think he would think of today's politics?
He'd be very disappointed. I mean, we have such a lack of civility in our political life now. We are fixed on ideological poles, and we seem unable to come together. And what Dr. King was always saying, can't we come together? Can't we talk about these issues? And, you know, our founding fathers argued with each other, but they also knew that argument was part of the democratic process. But ultimately, you have to compromise with each other in order to reach a consensus to keep the country moving forward. And if all we do is remain fixed on these polar opposites of our political spectrum, the country will not be moving forward. And we have got to find a way to get through this. And it's going to happen when the American people say, knock it off, stop it. And we want to see a different attitude with respect to our political life. We want to see a different level of civility in Washington, D.C.
General, we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, I want to get your reaction to this explosive book by former Vice President Dick Cheney, who had some rather surprising remarks about, among other people, you. We'll talk about that and some more things when we come back.